San Gimignano is a charming hill town which has preserved its medieval appearance more completely than any other town in Tuscany. It stands 334 metres above sea level on the site of a small Etruscan settlement dating from the Hellenistic period. The small town of San Gimignano lies conveniently on one of the most important medieval pilgrimage routes. Its inhabitants exploited the situation well. Made quickly rich by the constant influx of pilgrims, the families of San Gimignano wanted to show off their wealth. Each of them yearned to have a palace, but the only thing that could be crammed between the tight confines of the town walls was a tower. Merchant families entered an informal contest of building the highest and most splendid stone tower. The law forbade building the tower higher than the main communal one, known as Rognosa. San Gimignano bears exceptional testimony to medieval civilization, as within a small area it groups together all the structures typical of urban life: squares and streets, houses and palaces, wells and fountains. The historic centre of San Gimignano contains a series of masterpieces of 14th and 15th century Italian art in their original architectural settings. It's possible to walk along the 13th century walls where there are fine views of the rich agricultural farmland which surrounds the town. From Piazza del Duomo, proceeding to the right of the Duomo itself and crossing the lovely Piazza delle Erbe, visitors come to the Rocco di Monte Staffoli. This fortress was built by the Florentines in 1353, exactly when San Gimignano submitted to Florence. The fortress was built to a pentagonal plan, with turrets at the corners and links with the imposing city walls. It was defended by a moat, portcullis and drawbridge. From the only functional turret still remaining, known as the Torino, there's an extraordinary view of the old town towers and the surrounding countryside. From every angle, the town of San Gimignano has a medieval appearance. Roads, public squares, civil, religious and military constructions. A first-time visitor walking into an alley of stone or brick would believe that they've been cast back in time to a village frozen in the 14th century. Founded as a fortification to defend its inhabitants from enemy raids, San Gimignano is imposing with its surrounding walls. San Gimignano's outer walls include several indentations and protrusions. The plan of this small town of 8,000 inhabitants developed around two contiguous squares that were built up against the fortification wall, which is 2.17 kilometers long and partially bordered by trees. The main artery, which winds its way through the city, is complemented by a web of narrow streets, sometimes cut with stairs. During the Renaissance, Tuscany was the centre of the Western world. Its towns and cities grew insanely wealthy from a dense network of trade routes that spanned the Mediterranean and continental Europe. The town grew around two principal squares, Piazza della Cisterna and Piazza del Duomo. Piazza del Duomo has a more intricate layout that took form in the late 13th century. The Collegiata, also known as the Duomo, gives its name to the piazza and has been there since the 11th century. Today, Piazza Duomo is still the heart of San Gimignano, just as it was the centre of political and religious life in the Middle Ages. The majority of public and private monuments are found in this square. Directly in front of the Duomo is the Palazzo Vecchio del Podestà, imposing and topped with a tower called the Rognosa. The initial construction dates back to the 12th century. It was rebuilt during the 13th century and then enlarged in the 14th century. The Torre Rognosa is over 51 meters high and is a palazzo of 17 floors. It's second in height only to the Torre Grossa. To the left of the Duomo, the Palazzo Comunale rises up in full splendor, flanked by the Torre Grossa and the Loggia del Comune. It was built at the end of the 13th century and became the headquarters of the Comune after it moved there from the Palazzo Vecchio del Podestà. For this reason, it came to be called the Palazzo Nuovo del Podestà or the Palazzo del Popolo. The Torri dei Salvucci in Piazza del Duomo are also called the Twin Towers. Their massive and powerful appearance is no accident. The towers were meant to show the supremacy of the family to the entire city. The Manhattan of Italy, unlike many of our modern cities, demonstrates Etruscan design sensibilities, balancing the scale of skyscrapers with the urban fabric, and achieves an integration which pleases without overwhelming. Piazza Sant'Agostino is another peaceful oasis in San Gimignano. It's enclosed by rows of houses with a central cistern and is dominated by two large churches. Sant'Agostino Church is set against the background of the piazza and looks out over it from atop a stairway. The church is massive and austere, with a long side lightened by tall, straight Gothic windows. The facade is incredibly simple, with a single rose window up high, ornamented in brick. One enters the Palazzo del Comune through a splendid courtyard that was created when the building was enlarged in the 14th century. It's decorated with the coats of arms of the various mayors that held power over the years. The right side opens onto a portico called the Loggia del Giudice, literally Loggia of the Judges. This was in fact the place where justice was administered. The loggia is decorated with splendid frescoes. At the end of the courtyard is a cistern bearing the arms of Podestà Alberti, which ensured the water supply of the palace. A fresco is a painting, done immediately on freshly applied plaster before it dries. In Italian Renaissance, fresco techniques were distinguished between buon fresco, the good fresco, and fresco secco, the dry fresco. In dry fresco, the painting was done on dry plaster, with pigments having a glue or cassane base. In true fresco, the binder is provided by the lime of the plaster. In drying, this forms a calcium carbonate that incorporates the pure pigments, which are simply ground and diluted only with water. A steep flight of steps and an elegant loggia lead up to the reception rooms of the Palazzo del Comune, which are now occupied by the Civic Museum. In Via San Matteo, visitors cover approximately 150 meters of steep slope along one of the most characteristic streets in San Gimignano, while observing some interesting medieval palaces. Perpetuating an ancient tradition, the residents of Tuscany continue to apply the Etruscan design elements of light, stone, wood, earth and water in a way that lends an identifiable texture and character to the region. The architecture and landscape of Tuscany mirror each other in this similar aesthetic and demonstrate the region's ancient roots. Porta San Giovanni is the most beautiful and impressive gate. Completed in 1262, it has a Sienese arch, with a sentry at the top that sticks out and rests on the lower wall with its series of small arches. San Giovanni Street is not only one of the most striking streets in the town, but also one of the best known, as it's the most customary route to take to reach the centre of San Gimignano. In the street, the beautiful facade of San Francesco Church is all that remains from this 13th century church. It's a town brimming with character and historic attractions. People visiting San Gimignano are advised to simply spend time exploring the streets and piazzas on foot, so that one can soak up the atmosphere of the town. The main street is lined on either side with noble buildings of great architectural interest and old ceramic shops. Going through the arch, called Arco dei Becchi e dei Cugnanesi, one comes to Piazza della Cisterna, which was once full of palaces, shops and taverns. Piazza della Cisterna is the most beautiful and famous piazza in all of San Gimignano. It's enclosed by a wall of noblemen's houses and medieval towers. It got its present name from the octagonal well in travertine that stands at the centre, with a crest carved onto both sides of the well ring. Its appearance is attributed to a 13th century layout, undertaken in accordance with the rules set by the Ghibelline Comune. It's shaped like an inverted triangle and takes advantage of the natural slope of the land. It's completely paved in brick and connected to the Piazza del Duomo by an open passageway. There's no other way to say it. Tuscany is spectacular. Pastoral farmhouses, tiny villages nestled in the hills, rustic city squares that have remained untouched by the technological advances of the 20th century. This is the scenic Italian countryside that emanates the idea of the Italian way of life.